Are you facing a life or career challenge? It can be really tough to figure out if you should do it on your own or if you should get help. And then the next tough question is how to find the right kind of help. Well, today I'm talking to Johanna Beyer, executive coach and podcast host, about how to find the right coach, how to get the most out of executive coaching, and big mistakes to avoid when looking for and working with a coach. Johanna has a way of connecting with people and solving real world problems that is just magical. You will love it. She has worked with hundreds of individuals as well as organizations like Nokia, IBM, the Singapore Ministry of Education, and many startups and not-for-profits. Recently, she worked with a senior VP at Williams Sonoma who was very type A and who all her life had come from a place of fear and self-comparison. She was incredibly creative and also completely burned out. And Johanna helped her understand her old patterns that kept her overworked so that she could embrace a new model of success. Since then, the executive has left her company, has started her own consulting firm, and is now doing the strategic and creative work she always wanted to do. And she's partnering with her fear and her stress in a more healthy and empowered way. Welcome to Your Questions Answered, a interview series about befriending your emotions and living a more fulfilled and happy life. My name is Katja Cahoon. I'm a psychotherapist. And this is my very first interview, and I wanted it to be extra special. That's why I have invited Johanna Beyer, executive coach, to talk about how to get the most out of coaching, how to find an amazing coach, and the magical work that she does, especially with executive women.
Thank
Johanna,
you. I'm so happy to be here. This is so exciting.
it is super exciting. We've known each other for so long, and we have to give a shout out to Kristen Luck for introducing us through
Yes.
Women in Research Executive, right?
Yes, years ago. And it's been quite a journey. And I'm so happy. I'm so proud of the work you're doing. And I'm so honored to be your first interview. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Seriously, this is going to be a blast.
Good.
So, you have a super, super impressive background. I knew some of it and some of it I read up. So, at the young age of 18, you decided that you wanted to help people and that you wanted to be a coach. And
Well,
then,
it was crazy because I didn't even know what coaching was, but I did get an experience with transformation with my high school class. We did one of those team builders, those, high ropes courses where everyone looked at each other at the end of the thing and said, "What just happened to us? I see you completely differently." And I remember that was the moment I said, "I want to do this for the rest of my life." Like that was the moment.
I love that. It's so mission driven and values driven. And
Mm.
then you did it, right? So you studied at UCLA, you got
Mhm.
a master's in organizational development, and then you worked in a consulting firm, right? And you worked with the Ministry of Education, startups, Nokia, IBM, before you decided you wanted to work with individuals, I think in about 2000, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I got my master's in organizational development and I got to work with a couple amazing consulting firms and I got to be up in front of the room with all these incredible leaders and helping them think about their vision and their strategy and their values. And what I loved so much was when people would pull me aside and go, "I just had the biggest aha moment about myself and why I'm doing this work." And that's when in 2002, I think it was, I decided to take everything I had been doing with companies and with my master's degree and everything and create a process for individuals in transition to go through. And I still do company and corporate work. I love that. But I love my one on one coaching and I love helping navigate transitions with people.
That's awesome. And I think
Hmm.
it's fair to say that you work especially with accomplished women, right? So
Hmm.
executives,
Hmm.
C-suite,
Hmm.
leaders in nonprofit, but also educators, teachers, and so on. So my
Yeah.
first question to you is, why should, or what are the biggest challenges that successful women face today, and why should they get a coach?
Well, I always say it's a really there's a really big difference between therapy and coaching. And you're a therapist and I'm a coach. And there's a lot of overlap. But I always say, I work with people who've already done therapy. They know themselves. They know, they have an awareness of their blind spots. They have an awareness of their trauma, the things they've worked through, but they're at a place in their career where they feel that something new is calling to them, or they feel stuck, or they feel like they're in the right place, but they really want to completely crack open to a whole new layer of their leadership and potential. And they feel stuck. When you're like all by yourself, you have this thing called fear that is talking you out of taking any kind of risks to get bigger in the world all the time. And it usually comes in at about 3 a.m. The 3 a.m. fear when you're asleep, and it wakes you up and it says, who are you to throw your hat in the ring for that? Or you'll never make money if you leave your job and try something new. Or all or nothing thoughts that you would never say to anyone that you cared about. And that's why we rationalize where we're at. And we say, what we're doing isn't so bad. And you know what, I can stay in this toxic job for 5 more years and then I'll leave. And so when people are sick enough of holding themselves back and they really need some structure and process to get to the other side, that's when they call me.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
What are the biggest things that hold people back that you see, and how can a coach help with that?
I almost think there's like these symptoms that if you're experiencing these symptoms, then it is a total alarm system that you are ready to finally turn inward and face what you need to look at and get it moving. So if you feel anxiety or frustration in your job, your heart beats when you go to work, you're revved up, that's a symptom that you're not in alignment with your work, right? If you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, I wish I could have her job, or how did she do that? Or why are they getting to do that? That's a symptom that you're not in alignment with yourself. If you do this, if you go, one day you wake up all inspired, I'm going to quit my job, get my PhD, and move to a farm in Montana. And then about an hour later, you're like, I can't do any of those things. I'll just stick with what I'm doing. You're ready to look inward. We do all these things that fizzle really quick, and they're all good. They're all just wake up calls that something needs to be looked at. And I always ask Katya when I'm in an introduction call with someone, how long have you been hearing the whispers? It's time for a change, right? The absolute normal answer is between 5 and 3 years, 5 to 3 years, because we are wanting certainty and safety in our life, but it takes that long sometimes just to wake up so much that it's worse to stay put than to look and move forward. And the second you start funneling your energy into a new path, I am not kidding, the anxiety goes away, the frustration goes away, you don't feel trapped. It's like this whole new wave of energy comes in because you're finally allowing your truth to go somewhere rather than pushing it down every day,
Right.
you
So
know?
really what you're talking about is learning to listen to your body
Yeah.
and tap into that energy and realize, wow, I don't feel energy. I feel trapped.
Yes.
Why don't I have energy? Why do I feel so stuck? And then to reach out and see, okay, how can you help me get unstuck so that I can move?
Yeah. I always say it's when you stop listening to your intuition, you rationalize the abnormal. Oh, I think it's fine for my boss to scream and yell at me. And doesn't every boss like make people feel that way sometimes? Or, I should be really, really, really nervous on Sunday nights for my week because doesn't everybody feel that way? Or I have no interest in my job, but who does? When you start saying things like rationalizing the abnormal, you know that you are not listening to your truth. You deserve to actually feel connected to your work. You do deserve to be respected by people you work with. That is not a big ask. That is not abnormal.
Right, right. Yeah. So tell me a little bit, how should someone find a good coach, right? So when I think about my own work, sometimes I hear these horror stories, right? I worked with a client once and he told me that his previous licensed psychotherapist had tried to set him up on a date with another patient. And I mean, this was a great
Uh-oh.
guy and he was
That goes
of course
against every rule, right?
he was horrified, right? So what do you hear and what would you say to someone? How do you find a good coach? Because it's a bit the Wild West out there, right?
That's exactly what I say. It is the Wild West. Unlike therapy, you don't need to be credentialed or licensed to be a life coach. Anyone really can hang their shingle up and do this work. So the good news is that you get a lot of talented people, but the bad news is that there's some wackadoodles out there. So I would say the best way to find a coach is I would say three things. One, ask your friends, ask your network. Have you ever worked with anyone to help you make a big transition, especially with your work or in life? Ask around. Your friends will have good references for you. If you don't have any of those friends that have worked with coaches, do a good old fashioned Google search. Pick maybe 3 to 5 coaches that you really resonate with their websites, their messages. They look professional. They look like they've been doing this for a while. They have lots of testimonials, and interview between 3 to 5 people. I think it's really important. And most of the people I talk to, they'll say, Johanna, I have to just wait a couple days before I let you know if we're going to work together because I'm also talking to some other coaches. And I get so happy because if they do decide to work with me, I know they've done their groundwork. They really decided I'm a match for them. And that makes it so good. So talk to people and then follow your gut. Even if your friend says, oh, this person's fantastic, and you talk to them and you feel nothing, don't sign up and work with them. You want to have a real connection and you want to feel safe in yourself with your coach.
That makes so much sense. That's what I say to people too. Ultimately, at the end, it's the connection you have with someone,
Yeah,
independent of any approach that they use. Do you feel you can trust them? Do you feel they got your best interest at heart? They have the tools and skills to help you, and you can bare your soul to them.
that's right. You want to be so vulnerable and open. Nothing's off limits in your coaching so that you can really get to the center of what you need and want and bring that into the world.
Yeah. So you talked about three things to look for. What are some things to avoid? What are some red flags when looking for a great coach and also when working with someone? What would you advise people to be careful of or to avoid?
Such a good question. I think the first thing when you're talking to a coach is ask them about their process. So a lot of the Wild West is we're just going to get on a call and we're just going to talk about your work and what you need. That's going to last. That's not going to be very interesting after a while. I have a process. I have 6 foundational sessions I take people through. There's a method to my madness. We cover everything. We started the journey. We move into purpose. We move into vision and then action. So ask about their process, really get underneath why do they do what they do? Ask those questions, right? Um, I think it's really important to hear what types of people they've worked with in the past and what kinds of results have they had with different people. I think that really is important to know if this is the right coach for you. So, and lastly, just how many years have you been doing this? What's your experience like?
Yeah,
Those kind of
agree.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah. And getting a sense for them, right? If you get a funny vibe, don't go. Even if maybe they have great credentials or someone says they're doing a good job, don't go with that.
Absolutely.
Trust that, like you said, trust that intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about working with a coach, right? So let's say you have found a great coach like yourself,
Mhm.
and what what do you as the client have to bring to the table to make this successful, right? Because I can see sometimes people come and they're like, okay, you do the work for me, right? What do I need to bring to make this a success?
Such a great question too, because and sometimes in my introduction calls, people will say, "So can you guarantee by the end of the 6 sessions, I'll have a new job and I'll be in a more aligned work? Can you guarantee that?" And I go, "Absolutely not.
I get that.
This
I
is
get that too sometimes.
right. This is not working with me is not a silver bullet. You have to do the work." And I truly believe everyone's journey from when they hear the whispers that it's time to make a change to when they act on the whispers to when they figure out the new world, everyone's journey is a different length in time for a reason. There are lessons to be learned. There are things to be unraveled. There are things to be understood. And when the new job comes, sometimes my clients find it instantly. It's so crazy. And sometimes it takes 6 months. I trust in the divine timing because I believe that everyone gets exactly what they need when they do the work. It just takes
Mm,
different time, right?
right, right.
So, coaching is a two-way street. I always say I'm like your river rafting guide. I'm going to navigate the river. I'm going to know where the big rocks are. I'm going to be in the back getting you down. I'm going to be asking you the right questions. I have a really solid process to help you think deeply about things you probably don't think about in your life. I bring it always into action. I hold you accountable. I send you your notes. I cheer for you when you succeed. I push you when you're in fear, all that. But you have to show up and do the work. There
Mm.
is no if, ands, or buts. If I start talking to someone and they're like, you know what, I didn't get to any of my actions, that's a red flag for me. Like, why would you spend all this money with me if you're not going to show up and do it? What's going on? What's the resistance? So you want to work with a coach, get prepared and know that whatever you invest in it is what you'll get out of it.
So really and I think this is what I'm hearing from you, what I say to my clients is, look, we meet for 1 hour a week in most
Yeah,
cases. What you do outside of that time matters as much, if not more. Is that what you mean by doing the work?
absolutely. There's assignments every in between every session. And I want you to carve out the time and treat it as important as you would treat all the other things in your life. And you will be amazed at how quickly things begin to shift in your life if you really give it your full attention outside of the sessions. Yeah. But
Wow.
I don't know about you, Katya, but so many times my clients the day before the session, they're like, I did everything on my action list yesterday because I knew I was talking to you. So,
Totally.
accountability goes a long way. When I have a workout partner, I show up at 6 a.m. I love accountability. I wanted to read more. I created a book club. Granted, we meet every 3 months. We don't read meet every month, but I read books again. Like anything you want in life, get somebody on your team to hold you accountable, and it skyrockets your success.
Mhm. I agree. And that self-responsibility, right? And
Hmm.
what so many questions. What do you
Yeah,
say or what do you do when someone really struggles with that? Because often what I find when people struggle, it's not that they're lazy, it's there is a block. And
that's
they're
right.
somehow blocked or something is overriding
Yeah,
the programming, the good intentions. What do you do with that? How do you help someone with that? Because it happens, right?
it happens. Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why when I coach someone, we don't even touch onto the action plan until session 5.
Mm.
We begin with some other areas to focus on. I want to know about their journey and I want to know why they tick, right? Just like a therapist, like tell me about your story. How can you ever work with someone and just jump into action without knowing their origin, where they came from, how they've made decisions, right? But a session 2 for me in my work is all around limiting beliefs. So I don't care if you have the best action list. If you're still operating from a limiting belief, I'm not good enough, or I don't follow through, or who am I to do this? You won't get nothing accomplished. You have to work with your fear constantly when you're making big change in your life because it's afraid.
Mm.
So I always say it's important for your fear not to bitch slap you around all day long. You got to start dancing with it, recognizing what it's trying to hold you back from, doing it anyway, and good old fashioned action, pushing yourself over the diving board. You can talk and talk until your face is blue, but write the email and click send. I mean, like it comes down to that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
just have to do it, even when you're scared. Push yourself over the diving board.
Right. Take that one step, right? That one,
Yes,
and then you notice,
bite-sized
oh,
morsels.
right, it's not so bad. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you do it every day, little tiny, tiny bites and actions. In 6 months from now, you won't recognize your life. It will be completely different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
I totally get that. And it's, feel the fear and do it anyway. Right. I mean,
yeah.
that's really
If
it.
you don't feel the fear, you're probably not taking leaps in the right direction. Fear is a wonderful alarm system that you're growing as an individual.
That the stakes are high, right? So you're
Stakes are high.
stretching beyond your comfort zone. Otherwise, why would you do it? Because you already know how to
Yeah,
do it. Or why would you work with a coach? Because you're comfortable in that area.
that's
Right.
right. That's right.
Mhm. So I want to come to something really cool, the magic or one of the magical things in your work. So I just want to reiterate, you work with these high profile executives
Hmm.
in finance, in tech,
Hmm.
in nonprofit,
Hmm.
right? All these things, teachers, people with, advanced degrees. And
Hmm.
and yet you have this amazing and surprising tool that really it jolts people out of their rational mind, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about. Tell me
I do.
more.
I do. So for the last 25 years, I've worked with the tarot. I always say tomato, tomato. Some people call it. They're an ancient tool, thousands of years old. And these cards, I am not a fortune teller. I use them just to kind of anchor in the conversations a lot of times with my clients to kind of cut straight to the matter with what is going on inside of you. It mirrors actually what they already know. But for years, what's so interesting in my own coaching journey is I would never let anyone know that I worked with a tarot because I was afraid that people wouldn't take me seriously. But then as I began to honor this huge part of myself that I truly did believe in and bring it into my coaching work, not only did people love it, they asked for it. You know, people would call me before a big board meeting. Can you pull me a card? I mean, I pulled a card for Katya and I today, the science card. They're just a beautiful, beautiful guide. But more importantly than the tarot, I just feel that for all of you listening, the more and more you reveal who you are in your work, the more and more you bring all parts of yourself into your work responsibly, the better your work gets. Whether it's dressing more authentically or adding your sense of humor or bringing your spirituality in, or if you're a dancer, bringing movement into the room. I don't know. I have just found that people, when they take risks to reveal other parts of themselves, um, they get more authentic and their work goes to the next level. So I love this tool. I'm very transparent about it now, but it took me years to get the courage up to be that way.
I so hear that. I mean, we all have these parts that are strengths, right? But we're a little bit ashamed of them or
Yeah.
worried that what if we show them, right? And
Yeah.
that's for me why I was so excited to interview, especially for the first interview, because I have that science background and I use all these evidence-based practices, right? And yet I've worked with you with the tarot and
Mhm.
it's been so powerful. And one of the things it does for me, going back to something you said earlier about our rational mind or
Yeah.
rationalizing mind, when you pull a card, it right away puts me in touch with my emotion, my body. And that's where our power is, right? Emotion is movement. If I'm in an emotion, I've got movement, I've got forward momentum, right? And that's one of the things I see, this pattern disruptor of the tarot and this magical of like, whoa,
Yes.
okay.
It's it's really cool. And for me as a coach, sometimes if I am doing, I call it tarot action session, I have an hour with someone. It cuts, I pull two cards before the session. I tell the person, I don't know why they've come up, and people would go, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard, or they'll start crying. Whatever it is, people make meaning the way they need to make meaning, and the conversation just goes right to where it needs to go.
Right. Yeah,
And look at you, Katya. You're a businesswoman, therapist. You meditate, you bring in the videos, you're revealing more parts of yourself. And would you say your work has become more fulfilling the more and more you integrate all parts of yourself together?
100%. I mean, that's 100% it, right? Being more authentic, being more my true self, tapping into this creativity, which always comes with risk, right? If we're creative, there's a risk because we're putting
Of
ourselves out there,
course.
right?
How do I explain this to people? Is this credible? You just do it from a place of total truth and people get it.
Absolutely. So what does that do for other clients? What have you seen? How have the cards kind of help people break through barriers or live their more authentic self or kind of reveal parts of themselves that needed to be revealed or that have power in them? Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
Um, so I think that the way the card reveals itself is, I think what you said is it brings it to a very kind of soul level. I think sometimes we're so in our heads and we're so in our heads and we're so in our heads, and then we get the message from the card and it's like, oh, that's actually what it is. You know, like there's a card in the tarot called the death card. It's the number 13 and it sounds so scary. And I always say it's not scary. It's not physical death. It's the biggest transformation card in the deck. You are in a cycle of letting go of a lot so you can birth something new. Does that mean anything to you? And it's like, you don't. I was working with a woman yesterday. Her second child's about to leave for college. She's becoming an empty nester. The death card came up and she just starts crying. I'm letting go of so much of my identity and this and that. What are you birthing? I'm birthing this. And our conversation just went in the most magical directions. But the messages are so profound. They just open up people to new thinking and new feeling. And that's what I love. That's where I can do my work.
I love that. And you bring up this really important point that whenever we change something, whether it's a job or an aspect about our personality or tapping or developing something new, something also has to die. And I feel that's often overlooked, right? And there can be a grief that can come with that. Even if we're letting go of something that doesn't serve us, it still played a role in our lives. And I feel that in coaching or psychotherapy, that's actually really important to help someone with, because it can hold us back if we're not processing the letting go part.
It's so true. It's so important to grieve what you're letting go, but to also really connect what's coming in. And why change is so hard is we only know what we're losing. We
Mm,
don't know yet what we're gaining. So it takes a lot of faith, right? But when your thoughts go, what if this won't work? Reverse it to, what if it could work? And then start thinking of all the reasons why, whatever new thing you're trying to introduce into your life or new creative endeavor or new work, why could it work? Well, I've been doing this for 15 years. I think I can transfer this to another industry. People really trust me. And people just start talking, and to get connected to the new opportunity, even though you can't feel it, see it, touch it yet, it helps so much with making, that big transition.
it's so true. And I feel again the cards with this sort of magical way
Mm,
of appearing, before session or in session really help to connect with that. Oh, what do I need to let go of? What do I have that
exactly.
helps me in that transition?
And I know this is what you teach your clients, but setting intention every morning, whether you do a meditation or guided visualization, I use the cards every morning to just get quiet, to see what the messages are for the day. I use it as my daily ritual. So, whatever works for you, meditating, writing in a journal, pulling a card, all of it, setting intention at the beginning of your day is a game changer.
Totally agree. And then review the day at the end of the day to
Yeah,
see, all right, what went well? What do I need to do better next time? Or what can I
that's
learn
right.
from? Yeah.
Yes.
Johanna, I could ask you 1,000 more questions. I want to end with 3 questions that are important for humanity to think about. And the first one, so you're the first one to answer them, actually. I want to ask them in every
Oh,
interview, so no
fun.
pressure. So, first question, what does befriending your emotions mean to you?
Mm. Befriending my emotions is taking the time to feel what they actually are. And when they're not positive, like I'm not feeling energized today, I'm feeling a little tired, I may be feeling a little sad, to let that be okay and to actually not override it immediately, to actually
Mm,
honor the rhythm of that emotion and be more connected to it. Doesn't mean that I won't do stuff that day or be protective, but I'm just honoring it a little bit more rather than overriding it.
I love that.
Mm.
Yeah. And why is it important for all of us to befriend our emotions, especially in this day and age?
Well, I think that if you are a box checker like me, if you know, I think a lot of women today are very, very, very efficient. They're very productive. Give something to a woman and it will get done, right? But it's so important if you are cut off from your emotions and you're just doing all the time, you will wake up one morning and feel really, really tired, really burned out, really exhausted. And it's because you haven't been bringing your head and your heart together.
Mm, I love
being
that.
being versus doing. Being doesn't mean sitting on a mountaintop doing nothing. Being rather than doing, being just means that you're acting from a place that's in alignment with your emotions. So you're doing from that place. If the dishes don't want to get done right the second, go on the couch and take the nap you feel. And then I guarantee you'll wake up and go, now I'm ready to do the dishes. If you honor where you're really at, I think you actually get more done from a more aligned place.
I love that. Dissociation, pushing our emotions away is exhausting,
It's exhausting.
super exhausting. And being where I am, who I am, being present with that and being okay with that is a superpower, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And sometimes it leads you to exactly where you need to go. Maybe it's
Absolutely.
not necessary for me on a sad day to be super peppy in a coaching session. If I honor that emotion, maybe that's exactly what that client needed too.
Exactly. Exactly. Last question. What's your favorite tool to befriend your emotions, or tools or skills?
Oh, well, of course, the tarot, but
Of course.
also my dance. I
Mm.
haven't been able to do my dance as much because of COVID, but I usually dance on Sunday mornings with like 200 people in a gym for 2 hours. No talking, just dancing. It's a moving meditation. It's
Wow.
my church. It's where I feel my truth, my emotions, where I'm at. Movement and dance is my 100% go to for that.
Mm. Final question. There is an executive woman out there looking for change, looking to get in touch with you. How can she get in touch with you?
Well, thank you. Well, there's a couple different ways. I have a website called On Your Path Consulting, onyourpathconsulting.com, and all my information is there. And I also created a podcast with my business partner, Kim Morrow, last year. And we have a website called insidejourney.com. And you can look at all the corporate work we do in our podcast and get a hold of us that way as well.
Beautiful. Johanna, thank you. This was absolutely amazing.
It's
Such
so
a
much
joy.
fun.
I know it's such a blast. I could talk to you for hours, but I'll know we connect again.
Okay,
So
good.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.